Hello, career thought leaders. Good to see you today. And we are going to be talking about labor market trends and what's going on in the labor market and how we can help our clients who might not know that they're our clients yet kind of get ready for a shift that is coming. So in the past year, let's say, companies were seeing less turnover. There was less people leaving, and some of those things were causing people to kind of hold on tight, right? And when we're in an election year, especially in the US, we see more people holding on tight to their jobs. But what does that mean for the people who want to make a move? And is that going to stay? So we come every Tuesday and we talk about the now, the new, and the next in careers. And today we're going to be talking about some of the latest labor market data and trends and what that means for our clients and our services. Say hello in the chat. Let me know that you're joining me, and I'm going to ask you some questions today. See if you're seeing some of the things that I'm seeing and what industries you're seeing doing well, as you might share that with our colleagues who watch this live or later, and be able to see what some of the trends are that we see kind of on the ground as well. So when we talk about the now, the new, and the next in careers, sometimes we get on a little tangent. The last few weeks we've been on kind of a social media tangent, and then I saw some of this data coming through of what's going on in the labor market. And I thought, we really need to chat about that. So glad to see some of you. Thank you for dropping in, Jeff and Karen. And sometimes that's Jackie, Nancy. Good to see you. Thank you. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you are getting your labor market information. So again, be ready to share some of that because we can all help each other out in finding the latest and greatest information. We track article trends through kind of an AI-enabled aggregator, if you will, that pulls up articles that have the same kinds of topics. You can set the same thing through like a Google alert. The Google alerts still do exist, but you just kind of have to Google how to get to Google alerts, and then you can set one up. And then, like I said, we use an AI technology that I bought into about a year ago to track some of these trends as well. And the idea is that we hope to do it for you so you don't have to do it for yourself. But I would encourage you to think about how you might track trends specifically for the industries you typically work with, or for your region if you tend to work with people that are in a specific region, because it can be helpful just to see what's going on in your region. And I had someone that reached out to me a few weeks ago and said, we're having trouble figuring out what's the market look like in, the Bay Area. And so that's really tapping into your local economic development group. So your chamber, but then there's usually an economic development office that might be through the city, it might be through a county, region, and you can get a pulse from them and their communications in terms of what types of businesses are doing well, what types of businesses are looking to come into the area. I really find the local economic development groups nice to follow. In Northern Colorado, they had the Northern Colorado Economic Development Corporation for a while. I think then it turned names and then kind of got dissolved. But each county still had its own thing. And again, sometimes the city will have its own economic development office. And that's kind of separate from the business journal. So each area also typically has a business journal, and there's Northern Colorado Business Report and the Denver Business Journal that I can watch in my area and kind of pay attention to. And those are two big regional resources that you can pay attention to for your local area or for a bigger geographic area in your region. If you're trying to help people that are local, and remember that there are fewer remote jobs than there were, and so we are going to see more people that have to focus locally, it's good to just be able to help your clients find those resources for themselves, as well as they might not be located in your geographic area. But I can go and find the economic development office for any region and help my clients figure out how they might follow them or get their information, or maybe even network with people that work there so that they could learn more about what's going on with business in the area, who are some of the businesses that are growing. our local office also had kind of regional updates and one big annual update where you could go and hear what they're seeing and what they're predicting for the area. I will share one interesting article that I found today. I haven't shared this in our newsletter yet, but I found this article interesting because it talked about how you can look at the way that politics and regional policy play into the job market as well. So I put that in the chat, and I'll come into LinkedIn here and put that in the chat in LinkedIn as well, as long as I've got my site muted here so we don't hear me talking to me. But this article can be helpful just in thinking about how it's got some labor market data, but then it also shares things to think about in terms of how politics and policy and regional trends impact the labor market. So I found that one interesting, and maybe you will as well. But it talks about the growing industries, and this was a little bit older data. It's right at the end of 2023, but it's talking about healthcare, tech. And tech is interesting because not all of tech is doing well. Some sectors in technology are doing well, and then there's specific skill sets that are in shortage in the tech industry, cybersecurity, generative AI in general. So it's not that all technical is doing well. In fact, some isn't doing well, but there's specific skill sets that if our clients have, or if they have the ability to get them, they might make them more marketable in those in-demand jobs. Then it's talking about hospitality, tourism, and construction and manufacturing being some of the big industries that are growing. So those are some areas that you can pay attention to. I also like to watch some of the LinkedIn data. So LinkedIn News can put out some data specific to regions, sometimes specific to geographies. So you can go in and search LinkedIn News and find the news editor that might cover your region. I enjoy following a few of them from Australia, and they're talking about the labor market information for Australia, and then there are some for the US, of course, as well. And sometimes I'll find those people through an external article who's quoting them or speaking back to that article from LinkedIn. And then once you find them, you can go in and follow them yourself. So one of them that I was just looking at was this LinkedIn News. And it's actually just a LinkedIn News account from LinkedIn that you can follow and get some of that LinkedIn news. And it's going through the competitive job market for new grads. So finding there, because they do a lot of talent studies and the fastest growing jobs and the most needed skills and some of those things. So that LinkedIn News can be a good place to get some of that labor market data as well. But as you're joining me here and you're thinking about labor market data, if there's places you get labor market data, please do share so that we can all go in and see what types of resources each other are using, and it might be helpful to us. Again, you can do a Google alert set for labor market data. Some of the articles quote the labor market predictions from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You just have to be a little bit careful with those because they can get outdated pretty quickly. And where is it information pulling from? Where is it going? What does it look like? It can be helpful to look at a little bit more specifically instead of just looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics and their predictions, which again can be a couple of years behind versus being more recent. Okay, excellent. Karen shared Indeed. Yes, Indeed has some good workforce insight reports as well, as do a lot of the staffing firms. So that's where I was headed next, is that some of the staffing firms will put out great reports on where they see growth. And that may not translate for all of the different levels we work with, but it is a good indicator of what industries are growing, right? If industries are using staffing firms like Manpower or Adecco, that means they're hiring. And in general, that tends to be good for all levels of the industry or company. So Manpower and Adecco can be good places to follow to see what types of hiring reports and trends they're putting out, because they see large numbers to create their trends from, which is also why LinkedIn can be good. You see the LinkedIn postings and people are recruiting from LinkedIn, and so they're using that data and putting that together for you. You do want to be thoughtful of where the people are getting the data, what types of communities are they looking at? If you're in the US, are they looking at the US? If you're in the UK, are they looking at the UK? Those types of things. I know the Guardian in the UK does a good job of kind of collecting some of that data. And then we have an older session that I did with Ruth Winden years ago on labor market data. And so I'll put the link for that in here later, because she gives some UK specific resources. Canada does a great job of labor market tracking and information. So if any of you watching from Canada, I want to drop some of those links in here. This is just helpful for all of us to be a little bit aware of all of the information that's going globally. And here's why. One of the other resources we put into our newsletter for this week was how CEOs, so two pieces of data were important. One was that CEOs are looking more at restructuring for the upcoming year. So we've had this time where people weren't moving, companies really weren't making that big of a churn. And now individuals have gotten a little bit, we're focused more on stability than movement. And while we're, sort of getting comfortable here, CEOs are thinking that they're going to have to restructure. So here comes the opportunity for us with our clients, kind of twofold. One is that people are thinking about moving, but they're thinking about moving later, right after the election, after things settle down. That's when I'll make my move. But what's happening is that the companies might restructure faster than our clients are ready to move. So our messaging to our clients needs to be sort of informing them without this, the sky is falling, gloom and doom dramatics about it, but that there are some changes coming on the horizon, and how are they doing things right now that will help them be ready to move should something happen. It's actually a great time for people to think about networking, the digital marketing things that we've been talking about, digital branding, digital networking. Those are good things to be doing now when you're not in a panic to find a job. You can network inside your company, you can network inside your industry, and have some of those relationships ready to go, because there is this potential change coming. And I don't think it's, a gloom and doom for the economy, but it is just more transition, more restructuring. And a lot of that can create internal opportunities for people if they're ready for them and they've been creating the network that can help them achieve that next level internally or perhaps inside their industry. So those are just things for people to think about, that yes, right now, we're kind of holding on a little bit and we're happy where we are, or we might not be happy where we are, but we know it's not the right time to move. And that's great. Here are all the other things that you can do while you're employed to set yourself up for success when you're ready to move, or should something happen in the restructuring that makes your position not something you want to keep doing anymore, right? That yes, you may not get laid off, but oftentimes in a restructuring, you just may not end up where you want to be anymore, even if you get to keep your job. So those are just things to be thinking about in terms of the data around restructuring. The next piece of data comes around the global shift. And so what we're seeing right now, and we're seeing this in our colleague group, in our Facebook group, we're seeing more talk of people getting inquiries from people across the globe. And a lot of us aren't used to that, and we may think we can't help those people. But I'd like you to just maybe ask a few more questions of those people before you decide you can't help them. Because here's what's going on is we're seeing global companies like Microsoft, Google, all of the big firms opening offices in countries in Africa, in regions of Asia that they haven't been in before. So you may have someone reaching out to you from Africa asking you to help them with your resume. And your first thought is, well, I can't help them because I don't know that market. But I would ask a few more questions, because if they're applying to Microsoft, Google, et cetera, they need a global resume, right? They need a global company resume, which we can do. And we are maybe real well positioned to do, to help them get into those firms. And that's a lot of the growth that we're seeing from these big companies, is not just, hiring externally or even hiring remotely. It's this global expansion that they're opening other offices to be able to hire young talent. Because when you look at the demographics, the growth in young people is happening in African countries, as well as in the Philippines and some other places in Asia. So it's important for us to know that and to be aware and to ask a few more questions around those things before we make those assumptions that we might not be able to help people. It's good to be aware and culturally aware, but to also look at what are they targeting. And yes, we might be able to help them with some of those things. And when we look at that shift that's happening globally, it's going to keep happening simply because of demographics. And it's going to create more opportunities for everyone, including your clients here in the US, but they will need to have that more global mindset. And so for us to watch what's going on around the world in some of the big growth centers, as well as some of the big traditional business commerce centers, is important, so that we know what's happening and we can have those conversations even with our people that do stay in the US, to make sure that they're aware of what's going on elsewhere, because they're going to be hiring from external. I was just talking to a leader who's working with other leaders, and they're setting their budget, and they're just setting their budget based on US forecasts. But they're managing teams in India, the Philippines, and Africa. And so it's just important that these conversations we have with all of our clients, we realize how global things are getting. And the two articles we shared in our newsletter last week, when you see these kind of strange dichotomies, right, that we have a lot of open positions, but yet very high long-term unemployment in certain sectors, that you have people wanting to stay in companies, and yet CEOs talking about how there's big restructurings coming. And then one of the other dichotomies is you have people talking about kind of intellectual property protectionism and innovation protectionism, that we're going to, not build global teams that are doing that. But then you've got all of this globalization that's happening and is kind of inevitable because of the demographic shifts. So we're in this place of dichotomy in a lot of different ways in our world, and just thinking about that and how you balance that in your work, and how you help your clients balance that in their work as well. A, B, and C with a backup plan D, definitely. Yes. So again, some of the industries that we're hearing talk about, and I'd love to hear what you're saying: healthcare, hospitality, construction, and manufacturing. And a lot of that is going to be very regional. Also, a lot of like green jobs, so jobs that help companies achieve climate goals, because many states and even counties and local areas have set climate goals, and companies are making changes to help those municipalities or boards or whatever they are reach those goals. And the amount of jobs that is creating has been one of the headlines as well recently. So being and helping our clients be plugged into their region, since less work is remote, they're going to work maybe more regional, they're going to work local, but they are going to have that global perspective, because even their local or regional company is going to have global interactions, maybe, global opportunities. And so it's this kind of, again, this strange position and they're in of researching what's going on locally, because that's where the job might be, as less things are remote. But then having that global mindset, because even those smaller companies are starting to have the global impact. And as we're helping people do this, of course, the best way for them to get plugged into the trends in their industry is to start networking more in their industry. What are the publications? What are the professional associations? What are those informal groups that they could join? And we've been talking about this a lot for the last few weeks, just about thinking outside of the box, outside of LinkedIn, to other places where they can start engaging in these conversations so that they can be on top of the trends in their industry, but then also have the network that will help them move once they need to make that move in their industry. And those are ways that we can help them. We can help them think that way and just network a little bit more ahead of time before they need it, before it's a crisis. And of course, our class starts tomorrow, the certified social media for job search strategist, where we go through how we can help them find and evaluate those opportunities for networking inside their industry. But it really starts with broadening their view a little bit, broadening the places they're thinking about having conversations, and then getting out there and starting to listen and then plug in to those conversations. So I see some of you have shared some other things here. Healthcare laid off. Yeah, right. It's this kind of hit or miss. And when we say healthcare, sometimes that means more the boots on the ground than the level of position that our client might hold. So it's important to have them really plug in and listen about what is being said and what level of positions are people talking about and how does that impact them specifically. So I appreciate that. It's always going to have various levels in terms of position, industry, and geography, and how all of those play into the labor market and what it means for them. So thank you all so much. We'll be back next week, and we're going to start talking a little bit more about business development topics for the next month or so, because I know a lot of us are working on that over the summer. Might slow a little down for your business. And so we're going to start weaving in some business development topics and how you can maybe break out of the box of LinkedIn for your business development as well as capitalize more on the LinkedIn features that are available to you. So we'll start moving into that a little bit next week. And watch out for the announcement for our Tech Jam as well. So we're getting some of our speakers select their times for Tech Jam, which is July 31st through August 2nd. So we will be back next week, and I look forward to talking about the now, the new, and the next again on next Tuesday. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.